Okay, our topic is Partition of Bengal, 1905. Bengal was a province in British India. Okay, so we'll discuss it from political science and historical as well as economical point of view and perspectives. The sources are mentioned here: primary sources, key secondary sources. British parliamentary papers on Bengal partition, speeches and writings of Lord Curzon, contemporary nationalist newspaper which are Bangabasi, Sanjeevani and Kesari. Key secondary sources are general surveys, National Marxist Perspective, Cambridge School, Subaltern Studies, Political Theory of Shekhar Bandyopadhyay from Plassey to Partition, Sumit Sarkar's The Swadeshi Movement in Bengal. Bipin Chandra's India Struggle for Independence. Anil sees the emergence of Indian nationalism. Ranjit Guha's writings on autonomous political domains. Benedict Anderson's Imagined Communities for Print Capitalism and Nationalism. Okay, let's start the topic. Sources we have seen. The Partition of Bengal, 1905. A political science deconstruction of a colonial policy and nationalist response. The Partition of Bengal in 1905 was not merely an administrative act, it was a seminal political event that fundamentally altered the trajectory of the Indian national movement. From a political science perspective, it serves as a critical case study in colonial statecraft. The mechanics of divide and rule, the limitations of moderate politics, and the radicalization of nationalist ideology and strategy. It represents a movement where the colonial state actively attempted to re engineer the political landscape, only to trigger a counter mobilization that would forever change the rules of the anti colonial struggle. The official rationale versus the political motive, a case study in colonial statecraft. The British government, under Viceroy Lord Curzon, presented the partition as a necessary administrative measure. Political science analysis, however, must separate this public justification from the underlying political objectives. The stated administrative reasons: size and population. The province of Bengal, incorporating Bihar and Orissa, was over 189,000 square miles. With a population of nearly 80 million, the British argued it was too large for a single administration to manage efficiently. Improvement of governance. They claimed that partitioning the province would improve administrative efficiency, enhance law and order in remote eastern districts, and stimulate the economic development of the underdeveloped region of East Bengal. The real political objectives. The strategy of divide and rule, divide at impera. This was the cornerstone of the political motive. The partition was deliberately engineered along communal lines. The new province of Eastern Bengal and Assam was created with a clear Muslim majority, 18 million Muslims to 12 million Hindus. The Rump province of Bengal was left with a Hindu majority. The objective was to create a loyal Muslim constituency in the east whose political interest would be perceived as being protected by British, thereby driving a wedge between the two communities and crippling the unified cross-communal nationalism that was emerging in Bengal, weakening the nerve center of nationalism. Bengal was the epicenter of early Indian nationalist movement. It was home to a politically conscious, educated, and influential Hindu Bhadralok, that is middle class, elite who dominated the Congress, the press, and the legal profession. By dividing the province, the British aimed to reduce Bengali political influence, split the Bengali speaking population into two separate political units, thereby diluting their demographic and political weight, create a counterweight, promote the Muslim elite of the Dhaka as a rival political force to the Hindu elite of Calcutta. The demonstration of absolute power. Lord Curzon's tenure was marked by an assertion of imperial authority and a dismissive attitude toward Indian public opinion. The partition pushed through despite widespread and vocal opposition was a performative act meant to demonstrate that the colonial state possessed the ultimate unassailable power to redraw the map of India at its will. The nationalist response. The Swadeshi movement as a new political paradigm. The reaction to the partition was immediate and furious, giving birth to the Swadeshi movement 1905 to 1908. which marked a qualitative shift in the nature of Indian nationalism. The movement's transition from elite petitioning to mass mobilization. The moderate phase initially the response followed the traditional moderate playbook, holding public meetings, passing resolution, and sending petitions and delegations to the government. This proved utterly ineffective as Curzon ignored them completely. The radical shift, the Swadeshi program, the failure of petitioning led to the adoption of a more radical program championed by extremist leaders like Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Bipin Chandra Pal, and Aurobindo Ghosh. The movement evolved from a protest against partition into a comprehensive strategy of non cooperation and constructive self strengthening. The political technology of Swadeshi, a multi pronged strategy, the Swadeshi movement introduced a new repertoire of political contention that would later be refined by Gandhi. Boycott as a political weapon. This was the most confrontational aspect. Economic boycott, the boycott of British goods, particularly Manchester cloth and Liverpool salt, was a direct attack on British commercial interest. Public bonfires of foreign clothes became powerful symbolic acts. Educational boycott. Students were called upon to boycott government sponsored schools and colleges. This led to the foundation of national schools and colleges. That is the Bengal National College, aiming to create an independent education system free from colonial control. Judicial and administrative boycott. Lawyers were encouraged to boycott British courts and people were urged to resign from honorary government posts. Swadeshi as constructive nationalism. This was a positive corollary to boycott. Promotion of indigenous industry. There was a surge in the establishment of Indian owned banks, insurance companies, and factories. That is soap, matchboxes, textiles. The Tata Iron and Steel Company was conceived with Swadeshi sentiment and capital. Cultural resurgence. The movement witnessed an explosion of nationalist poetry, art, song, and theatre. Rabindranath Tagore writings and the ubiquitous chanting of Bande Mataram from Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay's Anand Mat became the emotional and cultural bedrock of the movement, transforming it from a political protest into a cultural renaissance. 3. The ideological radicalization. The Swadeshi movement fostered a new, more assertive nationalist ideology. The goal of Swaraj. For the first time, the demand for Swaraj, self rule, not just administrative reform, became a mass slogan. The rise of extremists, the failure of moderates, and the success of mass agitation led to the ascendancy of extremist wing within the Congress, culminating in the Surat split of 1907. The emergence of revolutionary terrorism, frustration with the slow progress of mass agitation, and government repression led a section of the youth to turn to revolutionary terrorism, seeking to assassinate British officials. This marked the emergence of a violent strand within the nationalist movement, which would persist for decades. The communalization of politics, the unintended and intended consequences. The partition had a profound and lasting impact on the communal political landscape. The British strategy succeeds partially. The British policy of dividing Hindus and Muslims did yield results. The Muslim elite of Eastern Bengal, led by Nawab Salimullah of Dhaka, saw the new province as an opportunity for their advancement. This support was instrumental in founding the All India Muslim League 1906, which were encouraged by the British as a conservative and loyal counterweight to the Congress. The seeds of separate electorates, the logic of partitions, treating Hindus and Muslims as separate political constituencies. was given legal form just a few years later in the Morlamento reforms of 1909, which institutionalized separate electorates for Muslims. This constitutionalized communalism and laid the groundwork for the eventual demand for Pakistan, a fleeting unity. Despite the British strategy, the Swadeshi movement did see significant Hindu-Muslim unity in its early phases, particularly in the economic boycott, which affected Muslim traders and peasants as well. However, the British actively worked to break this unity, and the underlying communal fault lines were successfully exacerbated over time. The aftermath, reversal and legacy. The sustained mass agitation and the political cost of governing rebellious Bengal forced the British to reconsider. The annulment of partition, 1911, in the partition was annulled. Bengal was reunited through Bihar and Orissa were carved out as a separate province. A Pyrrhic victory for nationalism. While nationalists celebrated the annulment as a victory, it was a Pyrrhic one. The British strategy of communal division had already borne fruit with the establishment of Muslim League. The capital of British India was shifted from Calcutta, a center of national, to more politically secure Delhi. The movement had exposed the limits of moderate politics and unleashed forces of radicalism and communalism that would dominate the subsequent decades. Conclusion. The partition as a watershed movement. From the political science standpoint, the partition of Bengal of 1905 was a watershed event. It demonstrated the instrumental use of territory, how the colonial state could use territorial organization as an active instrument of political management and social control. The evolution of political strategy, it marked the definitive transition of the Indian national movement from the elite-based constitutionalist politics of the moderates to the mass-based confrontational politics of the extremists. The institutionalization of communism directly facilitated the creation of Muslim League and the principle of separate electorates, permanently altering the political discourse of India towards communal enumeration and representation. The birth of a new nationalist toolkit, it introduced the methods of boycott, Swadeshi and national education, which would become central to Gandhi's later movements. The partition, therefore, was not just an event in Bengali or Indian history, it was a deliberate act of political engineering whose consequences, both intended and unintended, shaped the very nature of the subcontinent struggle for freedom and its ultimate partitioned outcome in 1947. Okay, that's it for the video. I hope you have understood it well. You can see it twice and read the PDF for better understanding. Thank you. We'll meet soon.